Welcome to the Terrible Podcast with your hosts from SteelersDepot.com, where you can find all your latest and greatest Steelers news. It's Dave Bryan and Alex Kozora, always lit, talking Steelers. And now, here's Dave and Alex.
Welcome to the Terrible Podcast, Season 15, Episode 28. He's Dave Bryan. I'm Alex Kozora, SteelersDepot.com. Thanks for being back with us here this Monday, Steelers Nation. In this Victory Monday, as the Pittsburgh Steelers advance to 3-0, winning their home opener over the LA Chargers 20-10. A two-possession win doesn't happen too often in Pittsburgh, and nor does 3-0. So, Dave, great day. Say it up front. We were both wrong, both picked this game wrong, and very happy to be wrong on this Victory Monday.
Oh, absolutely. And it's, you don't get, we haven't had too many opportunities to talk about a 3-0 Steelers team on this podcast over the years. That's for sure. So, man, normally when I hop out on, after games and get to the all 22, I usually go, standard offense and then into the defense. But, I had to crack open that defensive all 22 first this morning, even though there was a lot of good on the offensive side. Obviously, we'll talk about all of it here throughout this show. But yeah, that was a tooth chipper type of game for sure, and did not disappoint. And it seemed like it was going to make record time there, the way that game was moving on. I think how many plays do you have to chart this week? Not as many, right?
Only 45. So I'm a happy man. If I'm in a good mood today, extra, it's because of the win and because of the lack of charting I have to do. So yeah, that all 22 is more like a time capsule. Pittsburgh is doing things defensively that teams just haven't done basically in 30 years, and in some cases almost since the World War II era. So there's some ridiculous things happening in the best ways possible for the Steelers defense right now, Dave.
Yeah, absolutely. Boy, I think Cam Hayward put it best, and they're like a pack of hyenas there in the second quarter, and especially after Herbert was out of the game. Boy, Heineke deserved hazard pay to be in that one, after coming in for Herbert there. But oh boy, we got a lot to talk about even since the Friday show. So much happened after we got done with the Friday show, but I think we're going to start with a lot of game stuff up front, kind of work backwards from there, maybe.
Yeah, we'll just mention some of the headlines about some of the other non-game stuff. I do just want to get into this game because there is so much to talk about. Then we'll kind of come back and integrate, some of the other conversations. But obviously, from the really only negative here this weekend right now is the Troy Fautanu situation. Heard in Friday's practice on IR, expected to miss the rest of the regular season, could come back for a playoff run if that occurs. So obviously a big loss there, a big gut blow for this team. But Broderick Jones coming in, I think playing a decent game overall against the Chargers on Sunday. We got Justin Herbert situation. We got some housekeeping. Let's just touch on the housekeeping to get that out of the way. And we'll talk about Fautanu more in depth later in today's show. Pittsburgh elevating a pair of players on Saturday in cornerback James Pierre, which we expected. He was a starting gunner, even played some cornerback snaps once Corey Trice went down mid-game and once Dante Jackson briefly left. Team also elevating offensive lineman John LeGlue to give them 8 healthy and dressed offensive linemen in this one because Fautanu was placed on injured reserve. Anything else from a housekeeping standpoint, an active standpoint, some interesting decisions. Pittsburgh going heavy on D-line and Roman Wilson not dressing in this game. Only 4 receivers. Van Jefferson gets poked in the eye. They're down to basically 3 in Cordero Patterson. So I know there's been some frustration from the fan base that Roman Wilson did not get to dress for the first time on Sunday.
Yeah, and it was looking like he might, and he was given, it seemed like the interviews that had with him last week, it was trending towards Roman Wilson dressing for this game, and even in my inactive predictions, I thought he might dress for this game, and, they had lost Ben Skoranek last week, and you kind of wonder, would they really go into this game with just 4 true wide receivers, and once again, Roman Wilson for the first time finished the week off the injury report, and you get into the pregame inactives, and I think Mike Tomlin spelled it out, the reasoning why they went with essentially this came down to them dressing Dean Lowry, defensive lineman Dean Lowry, over Roman Wilson, and Dean Lowry had yet to dress for a game up until yesterday. And Mike Tomlin said, we went with 4 wideouts. We carried an extra D lineman today because we knew we were in for a run game fight. So long story short, we're going to have to wait at least another week here for Roman Wilson to make his NFL debut after obviously missing most of training camp and all the preseason with that ankle injury. And we'll just have to see how it shakes out next week. But at least it sounds like from a health standpoint, Roman Wilson is ready to start getting on the field here at some point. It just did not happen on Sunday against the Chargers.
I get the disappointment, and I thought Wilson was more likely to dress than not. I understand their decision. This is still a guy that missed basically all the training camp, the entire preseason, and was still working his way back to full health. He's had 3 full practices since late July when he first hurt his ankle in the first practice of training camp. So there's going to be a train to catch up on, and that does not always happen immediately. So I understood that perspective there. Darius Rush and Terrell Edmonds, notable inactives. Jalen Elliott getting a hat and playing on special teams, and ditto with Rodney Williams since being signed to the 53-man roster. From an injury standpoint, into the game, no Isaac Seumalo. Russell Wilson maintains status as the emergency third-string quarterback. Injuries in-game, unfortunately, are notable, along with this victory for Pittsburgh. Alex Highsmith with a groin. We got Corey Trice with a hamstring that happened on the first punt of the day. So basically without Trice and this team's time defense for the entirety of the day. Jalen Warren apparently couldn't really make it to the finish. Tomlin pulling him. Van Jefferson poked in the eye. He did return. And I think those are the names that Tomlin mentioned.
Yeah, and you have to wonder about that groin situation with Alex Highsmith because he had had a little bit of that, I think, during training camp and all. And he seemed to be pretty upset about it, I guess, when he left the field against the Chargers there. So it might be a little while on that. I guess we'll find out by Saturday at the latest whether or not he's going to have to go to IR for 4 weeks to get that groin right. The good news, the silver lining with that is that Nick Herbig, it's not a bad situation to have to turn to Nick Herbig as your guy filling in for Alex Highsmith moving forward here. So we'll have to watch that. We'll have to see what happened. What indeed the situation is with Jalen Warren there, and you hate it for Corey Trice, right? Guy that playing just his 3rd NFL game and had made the big play in the 2nd game against the Broncos, and then now a hamstring injury probably going to sideline him for a little bit here. But Mike Tomlin will meet the media on Tuesday. Maybe we'll get some sort of a few updates there on some of these guys, and we'll just have to see how the rest of the week plays out as they prepare to play the Colts now.
Sure. Despite all of that, it's still a sunshiny type of day here in Pittsburgh, Dave, as Pittsburgh gets the 20-10 victory over the Chargers, and just another defensively dominant performance. It helped to some degree, obviously, that Justin Herbert did not finish this game due to his own high ankle sprain. Offensively, it took some doing. It took definitely until really the 4th quarter for this run game to come alive, and it was really tough sledding early on. I kind of akin it to Pittsburgh lost some battles, but they won the war. And by the 4th quarter, the Chargers wanted nothing to do with Pittsburgh's rushing attack, and Najee Harris ran really hard, and so did Cordell Patterson, and Pittsburgh controlled the clock. And Justin Fields, Dave, to me, played his best game of the season. I know we're only 3 games in, but they gave him the most to do. He didn't have the benefit of a steadier on-schedule type of run game in this one until late. And Fields really was, not necessarily carrying the offense, but doing a lot more in this game than he had to in the first 2. And was really impressed by this win for Pittsburgh to be able to win despite the run game woes early on and just kind of battling and then really putting an exclamation point on this one with a really good 4th quarter.
Man, you talk about us talking about the Fields performance and really the Steelers' offensive performance in that 2nd game against the Broncos, and us saying, look, we can't go week by week trying to explain away we both thought he played good in that Denver game, but just having to explain away other things within that game. There's not much of anything to have to explain away about the Justin Fields performance against the Chargers on Sunday. And in fact, his numbers, he ended up 25 of 32, 245 yards, 1 TD, 1 interception. There were a couple of key drops within there as well, too. George Pickens had kind of a contested catch, bounce off his hands across the middle. There was the Pat Freiermuth that Justin Fields threaded the needle on, that Freiermuth uncharacteristically dropped there. So if you look at the raw analytics of average depth of target and average depth of completion, they weren't great overall, but he was playing within what he was asked to do. The good thing is you look at the passing chart of this one, you see a lot more stuff over the middle of the field for him. And once again, there's two more completions that probably should be part of that on top of it. And someone, when I posted those the depth of target and depth of completion numbers last night, someone immediately replied, "Is that good?" Well, I mean, it's good. It's good enough to win. You can get caught up with, man, I'd like this. This wasn't a day or a defense to drop back and push the football down the field a lot. I mean, it just wasn't. You talk about the edge rushers coming into this one and how good the defense has been, and man, you got a thumper over there in Derwin James, and you just wanted to play within the system and what you're asked to do. And I thought Justin Fields did that very well. So I love advanced analytics. I love as the season gets going, looking at these average depth of target, average depth of completion, and expected points added and all like that. But the fact of the matter is, were you making enough plays and moving the chains and getting, eventually getting the football down and in the end zone? And Justin Fields was, and the one interception he had, he talked about it after the game, and a forced throw per se into a kind of a stick route there, and he learned his lesson from it, and the ball went out. It took a fantastic play by Bud Dupree to come down with that on top of it. So lesson learned. But as far as egregious throws or truly interceptable balls, he didn't have this in the game whatsoever. And I mean, and also on top of it, one of my 5 keys, Alex, was yak it up. This team went into this game, last or near last in several yard after the catch raw stats and advanced analytic stats. And that's something I felt that really needed to change in this game for the Steelers to beat the Chargers. And boy, did it. They had at least the raw stats show out 144 yards after the catch in this game. Obviously, Calvin Austin III had a chunk of that on that long touchdown pass, and what a throw that was. By the way, goes without saying, the ball placement on that, the read, and in between the windows. So, Alex, there is no quarterback controversy right now, and I guess that needs to be hit at the top of the show right now. This is Justin Fields' job until it isn't, whatever that looks like. And you don't go away from what you're doing and the continuity that you have and learning to having him work within the system that you deem fit to run offensively. You're not, obviously we talked about the one interception. You're not turning the football over. You're not making egregious throws. You're throwing the football down the field. You had 5 true explosive plays in this game, 8 total when you add on the plays that had the penalties by the Chargers within that. You had the run element that Justin Fields obviously gives you in this. And man, if the Steelers' running game had been better in the first half, it's scary to think maybe how much even better the passing game would have been. But this is Justin Fields' job right now, and there should be no question about that.
The phrase that
Boy,
I've
that was a
used,
mouthful.
the phrase that I've used when talking about, should Fields be the guy or not is clear and obvious. And after week 1, it wasn't. After week 2, it felt, okay, we're getting to a point where it's kind of a pretty questionable, good, healthy debate, who should be the starter. After week 3, when you play well against a tough Chargers defense without much of a run game until the final 15 minutes to kind of, again, do more in this game. And I thought we had a pretty good read on this game. Granted, I think most people did because we kind of know the personalities and the similarities between the Steelers and the Chargers. But in terms of, we thought they were going to use the middle of the field more in this one. The Chargers play more zone. They don't have that super scary free safety. They don't play as much middle of the field close as Denver did. And Pittsburgh used the middle of the field much more in this game as opposed to the vertical sideline shots they took in week 1 and week 2. So I thought Fields played really well from getting the ball to a bunch of different people, distributing the ball to a bunch of different people. And yeah, I mean, when you play well, when you beat the Chargers, when you're 3-0, it is clear and obvious Fields should be the starter. Does that mean he's the definite guy of the future? I don't know. All I know is where we're at right now. We'll evaluate the longer term things after the season. But for the here and now, this is Fields' job. There should be, and there really is no debate.
Yeah, I agree. And when you look in totality at these 3 games right now, a little bit different altogether in some of the things that he was asked to do overall. But look at all the things that he's shown that he can do. We know that he can. We know that he can throw the football down the field. That was never a question going into the season. The arm strength. I think one thing that has become more apparent throughout these 3 games is the accuracy, dialing in the accuracy on the deeper balls. So he's got that box checked. The smarter decisions with the football, not putting it in harm's way. We see the arm strength out to the sidelines. I think one of the boxes it feels like he checked more of in this game against the Chargers is reading more, going through his reads and then distributing the football where it needs to go and resetting his feet and all. There were a lot of really nice pinpoint throws in this game. And once again, 2 of them resulted in drops, so his numbers could have looked even better there than what they ended up doing. We went through this kind of era of measuring quarterbacks of, man, if he didn't throw for 300 yards, where's the passing game? He didn't hit 300 yards. But if you look around the NFL right now, there's not many guys hitting 300 yards passing, right? I have not looked specifically at what the results were yesterday, but I know you got those juggernauts like Andy Dalton,
Right.
But in the NFL, and this rolls back into kind of the Mel Kiper rant and all like that with the too high safety and all. Teams have shifted defensive philosophies of just not wanting to give up the explosive plays with these fantastic wide receivers in the league and these quarterbacks with the arm strength and all like that. So you are seeing more of a even more of a horizontal game with less kind of vertical. It's more schematic, short area type of offenses right now. And that kind of fits, and then obviously teams are, especially teams like the Steelers, are focusing on getting these ground games together and keeping the games close, relying on their defense, and then just wearing teams down to a nub later in games. And how many times now have we heard offensive linemen for the Steelers saying, well, they were wore down? We wore down the defense in the second half there. But all of this just goes to say that I think in this 3-game span, and then sprinkling in a little bit of the preseason stuff that was worthy of talking about, Justin Fields can run this offense that Arthur Smith is wanting to run, and he can run it effectively. And I think one of the better things about it is he should continue to make more and more strides as he goes further in this. And the worst thing right now, in my opinion, is to mess up the continuity with all that, because he is continuing to take baby steps, it seems, each game. So apologies to Russell Wilson, and people will say, I know the pushback is, why couldn't Russell Wilson do the same things that Justin Fields is doing, but better? Well, why would you really want to find out right now with the way this thing is going? You know exactly what you're getting right now out of Justin Fields. You know what to expect, at least it feels like.
Yeah, you're winning, you're rolling. You're not going to change that. You're not going to mix it up when things are good and there's no compelling reason to play Russell Wilson other than, we'll see if the results are the same or hopefully a bit better. And there's no compelling reason to go away from Fields right now. He's been a leader. I guess the guys are rallying around him. And it's incredible, when you look at the negativities that he had and the knocks on him in Chicago, too many sacks, too many fumbles, too many interceptions. Those really have not been problems in Pittsburgh. The first interception yesterday has not fumbled, besides some of the snap issues, has not actually fumbled as a quarterback or as a runner, let alone losing a fumble, and has only been sacked 6 times through 3 games, which for him is going to be really good overall. He's had much higher, per game numbers over his time with the Bears. And so it's amazing when you give a guy, we talk about change of scenery. What does that really mean? I think it's a change of culture. When you come to Pittsburgh, there's more structure. I think Pittsburgh really, truly has a great identity. There's more stability in the coaching staff. And so when you give a guy like that some actual structure and not tell him to do everything and play hero ball and be the franchise guy, and you got to be the future Caleb, as he was in Chicago as a former first-round pick, and you just come to Pittsburgh and you're just Justin, and you're just trying to play your game, play within the scheme, make the plays that are there, and know you got a reliant run game in most instances, and a heck of a defense behind you. It can really change how you look as a player. So just giving him that kind of structure and culture, I think it's done wonders for him in his early Steelers career. There were 8 quarterbacks, to answer your question, yesterday who threw for 250 plus yards, or at least this weekend, I should say, because Aaron Rodgers threw 281 on Thursday. We got 2 games here tonight. So yeah, not many quarterbacks going over 250. Fields at 245. And so it's a too high world. And Pittsburgh, in some sense, is kind of ahead of the curve, because if you're in a too high world, what do you got to be? You got to be a good run team to run against too high and kind of make teams pay for not giving up the deep ball. And I think Pittsburgh has kind of, been able to get out in front of that overall.
We saw some more out of structure stuff from him yesterday on the throw to Pickens down the side. Even though it was a riskier throw, another one over to the side to Scotty Miller. The pushback there is, boy, if that ball is just a little late or coming out, or if it has a little less velocity in it, that might be a pick six the other way. What was it?
Right. I mean, how accurate? Fields has been so accurate,
very accurate.
Especially. But you talk about the ones you mentioned that were incomplete to Pickens. That throw to Freiermuth, that was like wrapped around like the Matrix, to him. And unfortunately, Freiermuth couldn't finish that. He was mad at himself, and he should be. But yeah, the throw to Pickens. On that throw to Pickens that was complete, I think Fields last year probably just takes off running at that point. He looked a little like he wanted to take off, but he reset himself, kept his eyes downfield, and found Pickens, who made a nice grab. So that's a big change. That the Fields of last year is not going to make that play, but in this system and being able to really work with him and refine him, it's a different quarterback.
Yeah, and then even go back to the one that got called back on the Broderick Jones hold against the Broncos, right? Out of structure, being able to put that ball right in there to George Pickens. So we're seeing all elements that you want to see out of a quarterback in today's NFL. And this guy, at some point we're going to see one of these 52-yard strikes, right? It's going to happen. He's got the arm to do it. It just depends on the situation when you get the perfect look and all like that. So we know he can put it out there on top of it. Just what he was asked to do specifically in this game, it wasn't called upon for him to have to go up top vertical down the sideline or even deep down the middle of the field. I thought Tony Romo made a good observation on that touchdown to Calvin Austin about the ball placement on that and making sure he put it a little bit behind because he didn't want to lead Calvin Austin into that safety, that opposite field safety coming over, because that if you put that out, that could very easily be a hospital ball in that situation there. But it was great placement and had to wait for that window to open. And another thing, rolling back to what I said about Yak, is you got in this style offense that they're trying to run most of the time with the things that they're going to be asking Justin Fields to do. You've got to, and how many times have we talked about, man, you got to have these throws where you can have at least give the wide receiver an opportunity to have the yards after the catch. And we saw that a couple of times in this game. And that's the good thing about Calvin Austin, too, is if you get the football out to him out in space. Well, I keep rolling back to that stat coming out of Memphis there, like one out of every 4 times I think he touched the ball was 25-yard gain with him because of the way he was used in ball out in space. I mean, I don't know how we can give the kid any more flowers talking about Justin Fields than we have had at this point, other than to say when you go back through the TV tape the next time, I think one thing that stuck out to me last night when going through it, you can't tell with Justin Fields if they're ahead or if they're behind or what quarter it's in, or if they just scored on a play. He's just very even keel. I think that's maybe one of the things that stuck out to me when going through the TV tape last night. Just a very even keeled guy. It doesn't get too high, doesn't get too low. And obviously this isn't his first rodeo, been around the NFL, but just the composure that he has on a play-by-play basis, it was something that I picked up on last night.
It's a great point. I've referred to it before with him as slow heartbeat. Just nothing seems to rattle the guy, and a lot could have rattled him because that was a tough time in Chicago, and you could have some serious scars from that. But he's been able to take it all in stride, and what's been a really crazy couple of months for him to get traded and uncertain for a while, would he be traded or not, and subject to rumors, and come over to Pittsburgh, and Wilson's hurt, started training camp, Fields is the guy, then Wilson comes back in, then 3 days before kickoff in week 1, Wilson's down again, so Fields the guy again. Doesn't even know he's going to start until 2 hours before kickoff against Atlanta, and to do all that he's done is really impressive. So yeah, I thought for Fields the game plan was different against the Chargers. They had to throw earlier, try to throw to set up the run as opposed to run and set up the throw in this one because the run game just was not there, and so there was more on Fields' plate, more for him to do, more to be counted on, and he responded. And then to deliver that 55-yard touchdown to Austin over the middle, hit him earlier for a big game again, and then hit him again for the touchdown. Just a really good game overall. So again, to me, phrase has always been clear and obvious, as it was with Rudolph last year over Pickett. This year, it's Fields over Wilson.
They had in the first half, I mean, once again, keep going back to imagine if they had got this run game going better than they did at the start here of this game, even though really there wasn't a lot. They got into they went a 3 outs a couple of times there. They couldn't get that run game started there, but they only had 14 rushing yards in the first half, yet they had 113 net yards of offense total in the first half. And we're able to get the football into the end zone. Great read by him on the zone read there down on the end zone as well, too. Easy skip in the end zone touchdown there. But, man, if this team can come out in the first half of games and get this running game going, it's just going to make the effectiveness of him and play action and everything off of that even better in the passing game there. So, I mean, that goes without saying, that was his single best performance of the 3 games so far, and the other 2 weren't bad. It's just, this one was just a more complete one, and we're not sitting here having to explain away, well, if they had, if this had happened or I don't think we're going to find many instances on the tape. Heck, Once again, his final stats show him having just 7 incompletions total. We're not going to fine tooth the offensive take, and 2 of those were drops. We're not going to find instances where we go, whoa, you should have pulled the trigger on that one, or should have went there in this one. It was by far his most complete game.
And when you're down there on the goal line and you got to defend the quarterback run element as well, that was, I think, an RPO with Fryermuth in the flat, which took 2 defenders out of the run fit. You're not going to stop Fields in that scenario if he's making a good read. I mean, there's just too much to deal with for a defense and too short of an area and no margin for error. So that is the quarterback run element that Fields can give you situationally that really makes life tough on NFL defenses.
Dave, he's going to break one. It's coming at some point too. We're going to see one of those 30, 40, 50-yard runs by him. Just because he's that electric, and
sure.
that will happen here sooner rather than later, I think.
He's capable of it, no question about it. Let's talk run game here. Let's talk offensive line specifically. Obviously, the run game first 3 quarters, you mentioned, 14 yards at halftime. There was one point where I think Harris and Warren combined for 11 carries and 9 yards. But the dam broke in the fourth quarter. That was the phrase of the week, the dam's breaking, and it finally did so in the fourth quarter. I think Najee Harris had to really bear down and create some of those holes himself at some point. But what I love the most, Dave, about this entire offensive performance is something I mentioned to you either on Wednesday's or Friday's show. I said, I was disappointed with the offense not able to completely finish out the first 2 games against Atlanta. You settled for a field goal, give the ball back to the Falcons, give them one last chance under the odds were astronomically small that they were going to tie the game up, but you couldn't finish that drive against Denver. You gave the Broncos the ball back, and yeah, they had like 9 seconds left and really no chance at all, but you still couldn't put that exclamation point on your drive. They did against the Chargers. They had the ball for the last 4 minutes and 59 seconds. They ran, I forget how many plays, 11 plays or so, including kneel downs. They ran the ball 10 times. They only threw it once, and the Chargers did not get the football back. Granted, the 2-score game wouldn't have been the worst thing in the world had they gotten the ball back, but I just love the way they were able to put their stamp on this game, something they could not do in weeks 1 or week 2.
Ain't nothing like kneeling down the football at the 1 yard. Obviously for scoreboard aspects of it and touchdown totals and all like that, you kind of wish they would have got it in there. But there's nothing wrong with, like you said, there's nothing wrong the way they finished that game out there. The Steelers had 14 rushing yards in the first half against the Chargers and 100 yards in the second half. 79 of those 100 came in the fourth quarter, and then -2 on the last 2 kneel downs on top of it there. So that they warmed down. The white flag was out there for the Chargers at the end of that. Yeah, by that time Joey Bosa was long gone from the game at that point. They took their soul out of them there in the fourth quarter, specifically really started running downhill. Cordell Patterson, man, you want to talk about what that guy can give you coming in the game as a third running back there. Some of the carries that he had later in that game were very powerful as well too. The good thing about playing at Acrisure Stadium, especially if it seems like when it's on CBS, is the boom mic aspect of it there. I have not fine-toothed. I just got into the offensive all 22 of the game after watching the defensive tape first thing this morning there. But watching the TV tape last night, how Zach Frazier, what year is Zach Frazier in with this team? This is like
year 10.
Yeah, it's either year 10 or year 11 for Zach Frazier. I'm not sure. I have to check on that. But man, was he vocal in helping with the line calls. And
if you had Flipper on your bingo card, we heard that one a ton.
And Bronco, and man, he looked as comfortable. Not that he hasn't looked uncomfortable in these first 3 games, but he really seemed comfortable within this game. And he had a rotating left guard with him between Spencer Anderson and Mason McCormick coming into that game. on top of it there. And I can't wait to dive deeper into this because it really feels like it was a good game for Zach Frazier in this one. Baldy will have a clip up.
Yes. I'm surprised it's not already up yet.
Yeah, he has to go around the league. He got the his weekly Nick Herbig session up first thing this morning already. So I would imagine maybe by the time this post or a lot of people listen to it, I'm sure Baldy will have a Zach Frazier reel up in there. But that was just something else. I can't believe you go back all those years ago, had to graded offensive linemen off TV tape, but there is still things that you can learn off of the TV tape by going through it. And boy, Zach Frazier was really comfortable in this. Now, as far as the run game goes, I think a couple of those too many tosses to Najee. They went to that well. I think too many times weren't necessarily blocking that thing up too terribly well. But those inside runs started to loosen up in the second half there, and they just started wearing them down there. And yeah, Mason McCormick coming into the game as eligible. That was going to be Broderick Jones. You know it was, right? And obviously Broderick Jones had to start this game because of the Fautanu injury there. But I think Mason McCormick has a couple of good snaps in there that will end up showing on Twitter before this week is over as well too. So really, the only kind of negative takeaway I think I have about offensively from this game against the Chargers is I would have liked to seen that run game, hit a little bit earlier than it did. And, I would have liked to seen them get away from that toss to Najee and not go to that well so many times.
Yeah, I think they were just trying to find some weakness in that Chargers defense. It's kind of a fact finding where you're just trying to see, okay, the interior stuff's not working. Can the toss game work? And there were some probably really abysmal executions and some missed assignments. I mean, there was that one toss where Derwin James is free and there's like 3 unblocked Chargers, and it's not going to look pretty on tape. So, I mean, nothing was working. I think you're just trying to, throw everything at the wall and see what sticks there. And yeah, as good as the fourth quarter was, they could not run a lick in the first 3 quarters, essentially. And that's a tough run defense. They're a physical group, and the Chargers knew that Pittsburgh wanted to run the football, as Pittsburgh's defense knew the Chargers wanted to run the football. So you knew it was not going to be easy, but it was tough up front. I thought Pittsburgh early on, they weren't physical enough. They weren't getting a push. And I imagine, unless this was planned, but it didn't feel like it because it didn't happen until so late in the first half. That's why McCormick started to come in and rotate with Anderson at left guard, because you were trying to get a spark and trying to get, a big physical, powerful run blocker, which McCormick is, over Anderson, who's not quite as physical and as intense as McCormick's game. So is that kind of your read on why they started rotating those 2 guys at left guard?
Yeah, they just trying to look for a spark there, and you had an opportunity to get McCormick into the game and start getting his feet wetter as well too. And yeah, I think it was to try to give him a spark. Obviously neither one of us are fans of doing that, but I understand I understand why they did it. And look, hopefully all this becomes moot point here pretty soon with Isaac Seumalo coming back, because you obviously aren't going to rotate him out there, and maybe you can start now. Hopefully these offensive line injuries are, because I think you wrote before the game their luck over the last couple seasons finally running out when it comes to that. But you still can have more than something to work with here with Dan Moore Jr., Isaac Seumalo, Zach Frazier, James Daniels, and Broderick Jones over there. So you can, that's more than enough to work with if they can get all those guys back on the field and healthy again. If you want to bring Mason McCormick in as your guy, as an extra blocker for, every now and again, have at that as well too. But yeah, you'd just like to see the running game just get its teeth a little earlier in game, especially in this one yesterday. But you do understand what you were going up against in this game as in the form of the Chargers defense.
And I don't think Anderson played particularly well. Obviously, that's really why they started to rotate those guys. But he did he was the left guard for that final drive. And some of those runs were away and they were more zone runs. I thought Harris and Patterson showed really good vision, but to give Anderson some credit, he was out there at left guard. McCormick got a snap or two as that 6 offensive lineman on that final possession, but Anderson was the guy at left guard. How about James Daniels as a run blocker? I haven't seen the all 22 of this game, but I know he's been a different guy as a run blocker this year. I think he's been more intense, physical, finishing his blocks more, playing pretty angry out there. And that's been really good to see because I don't think he was really known, at least my estimation, as that really nasty run blocker. His personality was a little bit different than some of the other guys on the O-line. I think he's playing more like the other guys this year, and I mean that in a good way.
When you playing next to Frazier, you better match that intensity with that nastiness that he has. That's for sure. Yeah, I mean that you go back to the way they Andy Weidel and Omar Khan talking about the way they want to build this thing from the line out and all, and just the demeanor and all like that. And there is some nastiness in this tape.
Let's talk about Broderick Jones for a moment here. It wasn't a perfect game. He got beat, I know, top of my head, off play action at one point and forced Fields to have to check down to the flat for basically nothing. But you saw the nasty, and you had the clip on him on Bosa, and I think that's the play that Bosa was hurt on. I don't know if he was hurt before that play or if he was hurt because of Jones, whatever the case is. But the point is, you're seeing Jones go out there and finish a rep in pass pro and flatten and bury Bosa. And that's what the team's been wanting to see from him. A little more physicality, a little more finish, a little more attitude. And that was a great way to kind of start Jones's day.
Yeah, I'm not sure Bosa came into this one 100%, but he certainly wasn't after Broderick folded him up like a lawn chair. I think he tried to come back in the game for one snap after that, didn't he? And then that was it for him. And boy, you take a big piece of that defense out of the game that early. That was very significant in there. I thought it was overall an uneven game with him, but I did think there were look, it's not a lack of effort with him. I don't think.
Which we've said. We've made that point.
But now you never know how, like we said, we don't know how it's going to happen, how it might happen. And, he might be standing on that sideline quite a while, but injuries happen around the NFL. Things happen. You never know. That's why I was adamant about, had Fautanu made it through the weekend and all like that, about trying to get Broderick on the field early in this game. Had Fautanu, been healthy, because just keep him involved. Well, things played out the way they did, obviously, with Fautanu, and he was ready, and it was good enough. And hopefully he can build on that moving forward. And they're going to need him to at this point right now, obviously, with Fautanu sideline for a very extended amount of time.
Yeah, so sometimes life finds you, and they found Broderick Jones to give him that redemption opportunity. And we had both said, even before Fautanu got hurt Friday, that we wanted to keep Jones engaged and use him in some form or fashion. That likely would have been the tackle-eligible role that McCormick assumed, that you pointed out. But it was a good first step back, and it needs to be better. And there's probably a lot to work on. We'll check the tape and go into that, but Broderick Jones is his team's right tackle for the rest of the regular season and probably the rest of the season, period. Even if Fautanu gets medically cleared, all the time missed, kind of hard to get him back in the lineup, I'm sure, by January. So they're going to need Jones to be the first-round guy that he can be. And listen, the talent's always been there with Jones. The issue's never been, is he good enough? Is he athletic enough? Is he nasty enough? I mean, we've seen the flashes on tape. So he's got the size, he's got the potential. Just trying to play your technique and play consistently and get some confidence back and feel good. And I think yesterday was probably a good first step in doing that.
Upward and onward they go. I mean, they can obviously win with this offense, especially if the defense continues to play like they're playing there. I think the real kind of next test for this offense, and hopefully we never have to get to that point, would be if they have to open it up because of being behind on the scoreboard or something like that. If you get down a couple of scores or something like that, how is this offense able to work, and can they move the football and score some points should they get behind. But let me tell you, when you got a defense the way this one's playing out to shoot here in the first 3 games, even if that does happen, it's not going to happen very often, you wouldn't think, if that unit stays healthy on the other side of the football.
Agreed. A big picture perspective thought I have coming out of this game, Dave, was this was a really physical and intense game on both sides. You give the Chargers credit. I mean, they brought it early. Their defense was hitting. Derwin James is one of the most physical safeties and just defensive players in football, and him and other guys too were setting the tone. And I thought Pittsburgh did the same. But by game's end, Pittsburgh came out stronger. They finished the game better than the Chargers. They maintained their level of physicality throughout the entire game. The Chargers did not. And the Chargers were literally limping to the finish line. They got the crap beat out of them. I'm sure that was a tough flight back to LA. You lose Joe Alt, you lose Slater, you lose Herbert, you lose Bosa. I mean, they were the walking wounded in this one. And Pittsburgh was able to really just put the pedal to the metal and finish this game out. And to me, that was kind of a defining reason why Pittsburgh won.
Yeah, it was definitely an attrition game when you look at all the injuries on both sides of the football here, or both teams here, and they just they wore them down. Especially, man, when you don't let the Steelers defense get in a situation where they can pin their ears back, like, because once again, and we said this at the top of the show, and Cam Hayward put it perfectly. You're like a pack of hyenas, man. I like. Are we done with the offense? Ready to move over to the defense now?
Yeah, I think so.
Boy, what a wacky week for the Justin Herbert kind of process that this thing went through.
Did it feel wacky? It didn't feel that wacky to me.
It did to me, because I thought, man, this guy, okay, because he went back into that game last week after that injury and toughed it out and all. And then obviously get into the practice week, and they say, well, he's got 14 rolls of tape on it and all. But I thought at least early week that, man, this guy's going to play.
Same.
Okay. And then we got to later in the week, and I was kind of wondering, this guy ain't doing much at practice and all. And then the narrative came out, well, they got the Chiefs next week, and and then Harbaugh talking up his 2 backup quarterbacks, and it got to a point where I kind of wondered, maybe they're not going to play Herbert. And then you get into game time, even pregame, I was kind of wondering, man, are they going to play him? Well, obviously they ended up playing him. The Steelers didn't care who was out there. In fact, they're probably like, roll him out there with that ankle. Early on, they set the tone defensively. This is normally, as we've talked about, a defensive unit that's been, not blitzing a lot, using a lot of 4-man rushes. They made sure to kind of send a statement early in this game that they were going to heat him up, with sending some numbers. And they, even though Herbert, I thought, for a guy to play on an ankle like that he played on, I thought I was a little bit worried there in the first half, because he was getting through it, making a couple of throws, and they were able to move the football a little bit within that. But the Steelers sent a message early on that they weren't going to play with him, that they knew that he wasn't going to have the mobility. They were going to heat him up with a couple of blitzes, and then just over time, they obviously those hits added up. And then when Cameron Hayward finally fell on him later on in the game, that was that. With that, now they put him in jeopardy. Now, maybe it's going to be interesting to watch the talk that goes with Justin Herbert ahead of this game against the Chiefs, a divisional game. But it was real physical. They sent the message, and they didn't blitz like, I don't know. Have you charted yet? How many times did they blitz? I know it wasn't a ton, but it was enough early in this game that they were sending a message to them.
Well, what happened is the Chargers, which is their personality, they do a lot of play action, max protect. And so when those tight ends stay in, those backs stay in, especially when they're chipping Watt and, they're just kind of staying in to give Herbert time, especially on the ankle, those linebackers will rush on those green dogs. And so you get kind of some blitzes that way. But in terms of like actual true blitzes, I can think of like 2 or 3 top of my head. They blitz Bishop on the Quentin Johnston touchdown. They blitzed Elliott one time, and they kind of blitzed Queen on a true blitz on another, but that was really about it. Now, granted, Chargers didn't run a lot of plays in this game. They ran 45 plays, but yeah, Pittsburgh has really been able to get home with their front four, drop seven, and that's ideally that's a D coordinator's dream. When you can rush four with that front and drop seven and get pressure, I mean, you're tough to stop when you're stopping the run at the clip Pittsburgh is.
Well, they were heating them up early. Those inside linebackers on those Green Dogs, were getting through and making an impact on this thing. So, the totality of that obviously happened. When Hayward got home, or was it Hayward on that one? Who got
that Herbert went down?
Yeah. What
that was Roberts that came in, and
Robert
Hayward fell on his ankle. Chargers fans are obviously emotional, but they called it dirty. That was not dirty by Hayward.
No. That was a jailbreak right there anyway. On that one. And I mean, just the physicality of that defense to be able to knock them around. And what can you say about the game Cam Hayward had?
He's washed, Dave. He's too old. He can't play. No, I mean, that was the narrative. And we were both pretty confident this guy could still go at a high level. And heck, he might even be exceeding some of my expectations right now, which I had probably higher than a large majority of the fan base. I mean, he is playing elite level defense. I've not watched the rest of the NFL as closely as Pittsburgh, so I'm maybe getting over my skis on this, but he might be the best run-stopping defensive lineman in football the first 3 weeks right now. Maybe not the best defensive lineman overall, but the best run-stopping defensive lineman. He has been just aces, and the power's been there. He's collapsed the pocket. He got pressure. He got his first sack in this one. I mean, he is playing like he's 25 right now. He is kicking butt and taking names.
He definitely earned the old man strength badge in this game against the Chargers, just tossing people aside, both in the run and as a pass rusher. All right, let's talk about that early touchdown there. They just got in that situation. It was a great play call. It was a great by Justin Herbert to look low first over to the side to get Joey Porter to bite up on that. Less blown coverage than it was got.
Yeah, that's my interpretation of it. I know initially I saw a lot of my timeline, and I get the instinct to it to call it a blown coverage. That's not my view of it. I think Pittsburgh.
I thought it was initially, but after going back through it, that was just a great call, great execution, great look off. And I mean, Joey could have gained more depth initially, I guess, and then come down. I guess Minka could have gotten a little bit over the top on that side, maybe a little bit quicker there. But I just view it as gotten.
Yeah, Pittsburgh's in cover two. They're running a nickel blitz or trying to hide and disguise it. So I think Minka's trying to hold his spot on the hash as long as he can, and couldn't get over to the sideline in time. That ball came out quick. It would have been tough for Minka really regardless to get over there, obviously.
Even if he gets over there, he's probably making a tackle only.
Yeah, he's not stopping the catch there. It was just kind of overloading and kind of flooding the zone that Pittsburgh was running. I thought Herbert read it well, got the ball out quickly, and just kind of tip your hat there. So I wouldn't call it a blown coverage. I think Pittsburgh just tried to hide a blitz and, like you said, got. Although it was very similar to the nickel blitz they sent on fourth down against Denver, where you had that hole on the right side. This time they sent less people, but maybe that call should come out of the playbook, because that nickel blitz out of that cover two shell is not working too well right now.
Right. So, obviously that was a big play in the first half for the Chargers offense. But, once again,
that was the only play though they really got.
Once again, we've seen this defense respond and, do everything right after that. And they certainly did really from that point forward in this game. Now the Chargers did drive down there. About 3 minutes or so, I think 4 minutes or something left in the first half, and got in a key 3rd and goal situation from, what was it, like the 8 or something. and incomplete pass in the end zone from Herbert. And I just think some of that already, just Herbert just not wanting to get hit, and then you mix in Cam Hayward really got up the middle really, really quick to kind of force that ball to come out quicker than what Herbert wanted to. If had Herbert not had the pressure and been able to hold that a little bit longer, maybe that's 6 right there.
Yeah, you talk about the impact of pressure and interior pressure at that. Think about last week, Corey Trice's interception. Who's getting interior pressure? It's Cam Hayward. Doesn't get the sack, but impacts the throw, leads to a pick. This one, Cam Hayward getting interior pressure, collapse in the pocket with a bull rush, forces Herbert to kind of, throw that off a platform that he wasn't totally comfortable, more armed than his lower half, being able to support that. And incompletion. I don't know if that would have been a touchdown. Romo said that was a touchdown if there's no pressure. I thought Jackson had pretty good coverage on one-time Steeler Fehoko there, but either way, the impact of pressure in the red zone like that in big moments is huge. And so, yeah, while Hayward, quote unquote, only has 1 sack, he's gotten a ton of pressure. He's collapsed the pocket, the power spin there, and it's really messing with quarterbacks.
It is indeed, and those. Even though Highsmith went out of the game with a groin injury, I thought he was getting some pretty decent pressure, or especially early in the game. Missed a sack there, unfortunately, on one of them. But Watton Herbig, boy. I mean, to have 3 good edge rushers like this team has right now, and obviously probably going to be without Highsmith for a little while now. They should be fine. Herbig can win that edge like nobody's business there, and they didn't go up against slouch tackles, as we said before this game, in Slater and Alt, and especially when you get this defense later in the game with the lead where they can pin their ears back like they were able to do, and then you mix in just the other guys there. I thought Keanu Benton did a lot of nice things in this game early in the game against outside zone. Good rep there. Even though it was a completion over to the Chargers' right-hand side, had a brutal club on Bozeman, knocked him for a loop there, and then just had I think a couple other solid reps against the run as well too. So like going back to what we talked about before starting the season. This front 7 for this team, and really it's more than just that, because you got a lot of bodies that you can rotate in there with Peyton Wilson and obviously Landon Roberts, and good game from Patrick Queen answering the bell in this one, leading the team in tackles with 8 in this. You only had Minka only 2 tackles in this game.
One came on like the first third down, and hey, we'll take it.
Yeah, sign me up for that for sure. You've got Loudermilk even there's some very nice reps I think you'll find in here from Loudermilk in this one. Ogunjobi still looks healthy. Montravius Adams didn't focus in on I don't think Lowry had many snaps, did he? How many did Lowry play?
He was playing in some of the 4 defensive linemen big groupings, but yeah, maybe 3-4 snaps in this one.
Right. So I didn't focus in on him, but it just goes to say that Joey Porter Jr. coming down with a physical run stop over there to the defense's right. Jackson and Elliott, some big sticks in this one as well too. This unit's scary, Alex. I thought, I think we both thought that this defense was going to be good and be fine, but this is scary good unit right now.
Yeah, I mean, that might even be, we were both really confident in the Steelers defense. I said if they were healthy, they were going to be a top 5 scoring defense, and we might have underestimated that because they are number 1 right now, and no one's close to being number 2. You got to talk about the run defense. That's where it starts in this one. You're facing J.K. Dobbins, who had rushed for 130 yards in each of his first 2 games, averaging 9.9 yards per carry. The first 2 weeks, Chargers best running team in football. They had 176 and I think 217 in the first 2 games, and they had a couple of runs early. They were going to get a couple of decent runs. They weren't going to be completely shut down, but Dobbins averaged under 3 yards per carry by game's end. He had 9 yards in the second half. I mean, Pittsburgh just played really strong, fundamental team run defense. When you're playing the Chargers, playing a run team like that, it's not just about your D-line playing well or your off-ball linebackers or your outside backers setting the edge. It's got to be team 11-man run defense. And I thought Dante Jackson tackled really well. I thought the tackling of the secondary in this game overall was really impressive. You mentioned Porter. Jackson made some plays, even on tight ends on Hayden Hurst in open grass. Minka on a third down stop early in that one. Sean Elliott continues to tackle really well. So I thought it was just really clinic tape, fundamental defense in this one, holding the point of attack, keying the ball, getting off of blocks, making tackles, just really good stuff up front.
Yeah. Once again, thought this unit would be very good, but they are scary good. And this was, even though Herbert was banged up and all like that, this is until he went out, obviously, until the score got where they could pin their ears back and all like that. That's a good offense that they faced. Obviously, there's going to be a lot of games, I think, this season, especially if them tackles stay healthy for the Chargers. That we're looking across the ledger and saying, man, they rushed for 180 yards, and those kind of things there. So that was a good unit that they beat. They just wore them down.
And you get I'm bearing the lead on one of my favorite stats of this game. The Chargers had -5 net yards in the second half. I mean, we had more yards of offense in the second half than the Chargers did. So
they ran 15 offensive plays
in the second half.
Yeah, and then I guess a 16th, if you want to call that flag on. You've been calling for them to shift around like that, right?
Yeah, I felt really, I'm going to do a little victory lap, pat myself on the back here. I don't do that too often, but I thought I was pretty confident in what the Chargers were going to do and how Pittsburgh could beat some of these things. I said stem the front in this game, and Pittsburgh has done that in the past at home. It's not like it's the first time they've ever stemmed the front. I think 2 years ago they got like 5 or 6 false starts off of that, which was awesome. But yeah, the Chargers were kind of jumpy, in week 1. I noted that, and I was so mad about that. They call it delay a game for Benton changing his stance. I think it's such a crap rule. I mean, it's just so ridiculous. You get called for it. If you clap, if you vocalize something, okay, fine, to simulate snap count. But stemming the front should not be a penalty. That is just good quality gamesmanship to me.
Yeah, I thought about that I thought about you as soon as that happened, and made a note in my notes to make sure to give you opportunity to get some flowers there. But it was a bogus call, in my opinion.
Yeah.
They also, the refs missed a false start on the fullback there in that game as well too. Luckily, that didn't, I don't think, caused any damage. But another blown one there.
Yeah, it was funny because the defense kind of stopped, but TJ Watt didn't rush because they just thought, because Matlock moved his foot, and they should have called it. And luckily, Herbert threw incomplete. Pittsburgh had 5 sacks in this game, Dave. They all came in the second half. They had 3 sacks in the Chargers' final 4 plays. So you mentioned the Chargers essentially having 15 plays. They were sacked 5 times on it. Obviously, they knocked Herbert out of the game. Heineke comes in. They got 2 backup tackles in. Slater was in and out of the game. They're shifting people around. They're putting left guard to left tackle. They're just really tough up front. But yeah, 5 sacks. First time since week 2 last year, Pittsburgh has had 5 sacks in a game. They're like 42-5 in the Tomlin era when they get 5 sacks in the game, won the last 14 games with that kind of stat. So again, just total dominance here in the second half.
Sure was.
Anything else from this one defensively? Any other names we're forgetting? Just really solid team defense overall was my takeaway.
Yeah, just man, keep that unit healthy, and that's going to be a hard team to score more than 17 points on. That's for sure.
Yeah, for sure. Special teams here. What do we? Any thoughts?
James Pierre belongs on NFL rosters as a gunner, if nothing else. That's one takeaway that I have as far as special teams. Second one was we kind of debated what this team was going to do. And we'll lose some listeners here because this is the unsexy part of the show. But Peyton Wilson was left wing, and Jalen Elliott was right wing. That was an observation. Had a feeling that Elliott might get the helmet over Edmonds if both of them did not dress, because of Elliott experience on playing that wing. Rodney Williams took over, I think, the Tyler Matakevich spot on the line at left guard. I noted that Rodney Williams had he didn't get enough flowers from the CBS broadcast from Romo on that kickoff tackle. I don't think. I haven't looked at that on the All 22. I'm sure you'll pull it at some point here. Miles Killebrew is going to block a punt at some point this year, if not two, and maybe even Connor Hayward is going to block a punt at some point this year. I'm burying the lead here. Corliss Waitman. What a nice game from him. Let me pull up some stats, and hopefully we don't have to talk about him punting a lot in games. Mm-hmm. Corliss Waitman punted 3 times against the Chargers for a 52-yard average with a long of 56, no touchbacks. Remember we talked about in the last one, if not for the touchbacks, well, no touchbacks in this one. One inside the 20. 2 of his 3 punts were fair caught, and the other one returned for 5 yards. There's nothing wrong with that.
Basically what a 50-yard net probably for this game. So that is elite numbers there. Yeah, I thought James Pierre, he forced, I think, both of those fair catches. The other gunner, I think David O, who was at the game, said it was Beanie. I'll have to go back and see if they put anyone else in, but I think the starting gunners were Pierre and Beanie Bishop, with Darius Rush being down, who has not been, to me, very successful as a gunner this year. And obviously you lose Skoranek to that shoulder injury. He's on IR. But yeah, Pierre, super impactful. Glad he's back. Happy to have him in the fold. I just thought field position Pittsburgh won from a punting aspect that you mentioned, and 2 kick coverage tackles, the one that you talked about. The one put him at the 20, the other one put them at the 12. I think that was the one that Rodney had. And that was a great kick by Boss. I think on these kickoff rules, State, my one big takeaway I have right now is whatever kicker can master the art of that knuckleball that lands inside the landing zone, because the ball has to get to at least the 20, otherwise it comes out to the 40. Whoever can do that, creates that bouncing ball, is going to have a real advantage. And they've worked on that in camp. And on that one, I think that they tackled them at the 12. That was kind of a knuckleball that Boss kicked, and it skipped, and the Chargers returner had trouble fielding it, because once that ball hits the ground, then your coverage team can move. And so I think if you can master that can be a real big-time weapon, because that's stuff that can change field position by 10, 15, 20 yards, as it did in this game.
Absolutely. And we worried about the punt coverage unit, going into this thing. So they'll obviously be elevating Pierre, if not giving him a spot on the 53 before too long. Because if I'm an NFL team right now and James Pierre's on the practice squad and I'm having trouble with my gunners, I'm picking up the phone to call him. So
yeah. And they do have an open roster spot right now, correct?
They do.
So I think you get Pierre on there sooner than later. Obviously have some elevation, another 2 to work with, but he'll be on the 53 here, I think, before long.
It's a shame they had to send Boswell out there to kick from Scranton on that one.
Yeah, that was, again, had some of the completions that Frymouth had dropped that pass there, right? That was on that drive. So, 62-yarder, you push the edge of the range there. I mean, he had the leg. It just pushed a little to the right, I think. That is not the longest field goal attempt in Steelers history, though. You'd think it would be. It was Boswell's, I believe, his longest attempt. He had a 61-yarder in Jacksonville last year after he made that first kick, and they called that penalty on Say Molly, which was crap. Jeff Reed had a 65-yarder in Denver in 2007 on that altitude, and it was short, but I think it was the second longest attempt in Pittsburgh history.
All right. A few other notes. Probably should have hit this on the offensive side of the ball. 2 penalties, illegal formation. That can't happen.
Yeah, I don't know what it was. I know Patterson was in the area. I don't know if it was him not on the line or somebody else not on the line. Sometimes they call, the guy who was lined up properly, but somebody else didn't line up properly, which made Patterson illegal. I don't know. But only 3 penalties overall. You were penalized 10 times against Denver. The one, unfortunately, did wipe out that 18-yard completion to Freiermuth, which was a great, yak chance there by him. But yeah, that was frustrating.
All right, what are you doing with Calvin Austin moving forward?
I think still maintain his role. I think you'll probably give him more snaps. I think you dress for him with Wilson. Van Jefferson just not getting much out of him. And yeah, I should at least give Austin more flowers than I have so far. A great game for him. I've been pretty critical of him, I think last year, this summer especially. I think I've been fair, and I stand by what I've said about that. But I think he had just a really good game, and showing his speed has never been a question. I've never questioned his speed. I knew a second that he, got out in open grass on that touchdown, he was gone. No one's going to catch that guy. I mean, he's a legitimate 4-3 type of runner. Even the catch he had
left over on the left
on the 2-minute drill
right.
was maybe even as impressive in the sense of making a tough catch outside your frame above your head like that. Things I haven't seen Austin do. I know he can run. I know he can make, can run away in space, but making that tough catch along the sideline, him and Scotty Miller, some big time plays, and Miller got a bunch of yak on that one. But Austin, it was a small play, but that was a big play in my mind for Austin.
I agree.
And yeah, Scotty Miller with the third down, which was a great ball by Field, turns up Field to get yak. They had a 20-yard gain. You got some gamers in there in Austin and Miller.
You obviously would like to try, and we'll see what Roman Wilson can bring this wide receiver unit. But I think this goes back to what we said. Can they win with this offense with the guys that they have right now? Well, I'm going to give you some analysis here. Yes, 3-0, especially with that defense, for sure. Once again, I think the thing is when this offense will be tested is when and if they're down and have to spread it out and be a little bit more predictable in the passing game, those kind of things. I think that's where a potential test might come. But this was a fun game to watch 2 times on the TV tape late last night, and it's a fun game on the all 22 as well.
Yeah, just good to win by 2 possessions, to have a semi-comfortable win, which those don't happen too often in Pittsburgh. Usually last couple minutes, you're really biting your fingernails off, and it wasn't an easy win by no means, and Pittsburgh trailed as much in this game as they have all season, but a good quality win. And the takeaways are how good this defense is, and the Justin Fields is QB1, and that debate is over.
All right, what do we have to mop up here? Anything?
Oh, we got to talk more about Fautanu and Hurt Friday. So we do the Friday show. We're talking about Broderick Jones, redemption. How do you get him involved? And just scrap that whole conversation. Fautanu. We heard about the injury from Broderick himself. He had talked to reporters and said that Fautanu had tweaked something, had to get an MRI, was listed with a knee injury, questionable officially on the Friday report. And then Saturday gets some information. Schefter says he's out indefinitely. Team puts him on IR. And then I think it was last night that we heard from Ian Rappaport about exactly what he's dealing with, or something pretty close to details. Rappaport said essentially a dislocated kneecap. I don't know what the difference between essentially and an actual dislocated kneecap is, but that seems to be the injury. I don't know which leg. I don't know if it's to the left leg, which he had sprained his MCL in earlier this year. Still don't know details on that. Jerry Dulac said it happened at practice. He said it was non-contact, but he also said he was engaged with a player, which to me is not non-contact, but I assume he means that nobody rolled into his knee or something like that. So he probably stepped wrong or something like that happened, but he's on IR, expected to miss the rest of the regular season. Rappaport says he could come back for the playoffs. To me, this sounds pretty similar, and I made this comparison even before knowing the injury from a first-round offensive lineman Hurt standpoint, to David DeCastro in 2012. He dislocated his kneecap. I think had some other issues, some other ligament damage as well. That was
in the preseason, right?
Yeah, that was in the preseason in, I think, late August. He came back and dressed for his first game in early December, I think in week 14, and then started the final 3 games after that. So he missed about 3.5 months. You apply the same timeline to Fautanu, that will put him back in about early to mid-January. So it kind of matches the potential playoff run, standpoint there for him. So it sucks a lot, obviously. It just 2 knee injuries in 6 weeks to really have your rookie season be a wash. It sucks, but DeCastro came back and obviously had a great career, and maybe Fautanu can do the same.
All right, I think we have Melanie Friedlander put something together on that, hopefully, right?
I'm sure she is. I'll double check. I'm sure we'll get her on it now that we kind of have some inclination of the exact nature of the injury. Still missing some details, but as we mentioned, top of the show, this is Broderick Jones at right tackle. So whether or not you're, despite his uneven play, tough summer overall, he's the guy.
Yep, he is. All right.
All right, Dave, I think that is basically everything. Anything else from around the AFC North? The Browns lost hilariously to the Giants. The Ravens almost blew a big lead against Dallas, but hung on to win. And the Bengals play tonight. I think you had tweeted, Dave, that Pittsburgh is not only, of course, first place in the division, they are first place in the AFC overall right now.
Number 1 seed right now. And once again, 3-0 start. That only happened 3 times previously with Mike Tomlin as the head coach, and all 3 times this team made a playoff. So playoffs, just keep on keeping on. This was a game that I was unsure about, even with Justin Herbert banged up. That's why I picked against the Steelers in this game. I thought it'd be a close physical game, but I thought the Chargers would end up getting the better end of the Steelers here, and obviously they didn't. So you got to go back on the road again and play the Colts in what feels like a very, very winnable game.
It is, although we had that same feeling last year and it didn't work out. Now, granted, it's a much different team. It's not Mitch Trubisky at quarterback. It's not a defense that is as hurt as any defense in football. But the Colts are a little healthier. I know Anthony Richardson is struggling, but he'll be out there. Didn't see him last year. So we'll talk about the Colts and get into their tape. They beat the Bears for their first win on Sunday. Let me leave you with one stat of the week. We've got a bunch of them up on the site right now. Pittsburgh is only the second team since 1940 to have a 3-0 start with only 3 touchdowns or fewer. And the team before that, the other team since 1940 was the 88 Bills. They'd only had 2 touchdowns their first 3 games and went 3-0. The team prior to that had a 3-0 start with no more than 3 touchdowns were the Pittsburgh Steelers, which were then called the Pittsburgh Pirates in 1936. They scored 3 touchdowns their first 3 games and won all 3, scoring 10 points in exactly 10 points in all 3 games to start the season 3-0. So you are literally getting a lot of pre-World War II type of stats here with this offense, which is not maybe the most comforting feeling, but it is weird and it is fun and they are wins.
You really enjoy putting that together every week, don't you?
Do. It's my favorite article.
That's a great read. And boy, Tom Mead with his Tom 10 takes is something that the readers just read. Tom does such a great job with that. I always look forward to plowing into that right after the game as well, too. So good job on your part on getting those together there.
Let me ask you just one last thing. Do you think they're going to credit TJ Watt with a half sack, and do you want them to so he gets 100 off of a stat correction, or will it stay full with Hayward?
I'll have to go back and look at it, but was Watt pointing at?
He was. I think he was trying to say. I think he was trying to say like that's Hayward's sack. That was my.
That's what I took it. Because I've already gone through that and I already had the clip of that up. It looked like he was trying to say, no, that's Hayward's. But maybe he's saying I want that one.
Would you want them to do it that way?
I feel pretty confident that he's going to add to that total. So why not happen where he can get it in game and get all the flowers to go along with it?
Yeah, I'm with you. But his next sack, really any kind, even a half sack, will push him to 100, which will make him the second fastest player in NFL history officially to reach 100 sacks, only behind the great and legendary Reggie White. A reminder that if there was a sack stat, Reggie White probably leads it. And so that's going to be elite company to be in. And a really cool pregame interview with J.J. Watt and T.J. Watt. That's some pretty special stuff there.
And props to Cam Hayward for caring about Justin Herbert after he fell on him. He got up, pointed down, call an ambulance, but not for me.
Look at you, the memes.
I try to stay trendy with the kids these days. All right, shall we get to some? We got a bunch of reader emails in here, Alex.
Yeah, let's get some emails and close out today's show.
All right, let's start here. Oh boy, a bunch of them. Future of our tackles, Mark Manell. This is very lengthy. I'm going to try to summarize it here. Looks like it'll be more. And Jones, the question is, how do you envision this affecting the decision-making process for next year? This is lengthy. I think that's the gist of what he's saying. Mark, once again, I mean, it's week 3, and we see how quickly this stuff changes. And yes, Dan Moore is playing good. obviously we'll see how long it takes for Fautanu to come back, and we'll see how Broderick Jones does in the meantime here. It's just so hard for us to sit here and coming out of week 3 and giving any speculation of how we envision this affecting the decision process making next year. I mean, first and foremost, Dan Moore is going to be an unrestricted free agent. So unless you want him testing the market, and if he plays the way he's been playing right now, that the meter's running there for him. So good on him, because I going into the season, I had his value a lot less, and it just goes to show you that's why it's dangerous to get into speculating about how much is this guy going to be worth after the season. He has more than answered the bell at left tackle at this point. So to prevent Dan Moore Jr. from hitting free agency, or at the minimum going through the legal tampering period, you would have to get him locked up, and this team's got two first-round draft picks and tied up in their tackles. So one would think that even as good as Dan Moore's playing right now, that they're going to have to let him go test free agency. That would be my main takeaway right now, is regardless of what happens, that Dan Moore's going to test free agency.
That's my thought as well. But as you mentioned, we're so far away from that, and so much can and likely will change, that I'm not even thinking about Dan Moore and free agency in March right now. I'm just thinking about 3-0 Pittsburgh Steelers.
Me as well. All right, let's go to Jason Chadwell. First on the Friday preview, Alex mentioned how Ladd McConkey would be a thorn for Pittsburgh. For a while, it looked like that would be the case, and if Herbert doesn't get knocked out, his stats would look even better. So shout out to Alex on that one. Next, if Sunday was any indication as to why they need to start dressing Roman Wilson, you are only one play away from Patterson becoming a primary wide receiver. I know he missed a lot of time this summer, but would still rather Wilson running routes over Patterson. I think the decision that you get into here really is, I think Mike Tomlin spelled it out first and foremost of why he went the way that he went with the inactive list. Second is, Roman doesn't play on special teams, and even once he does get on the field, it's going to be slow roll for him at first, barring injuries. Look, we all want Roman Wilson on the field sooner rather than later, right? But I just caution of how much involvement it's going to be, at least at the get-go here with him.
Yeah, I mean, when you miss that kind of chunk of time in developmental periods like training camp, it really puts you behind. But listen, I like Patterson, the running back, even the kick returner, even though I've not seen him get the return or kick yet. But as a receiver, it's not really ideal. I know he can do it, but you lose Jefferson early in that game, and that really kind of puts you in a bind there. So yeah, obviously, you ideally every team wants to dress at least 5 guys to give you some flexibility. So I think in this game, because they wanted to go heavy on the D line, like you mentioned, because of the lack of special teams values, some of the elevations they had to do in this one. I think we'll probably see Roman at least dress going forward, barring a bunch of injuries here, to give this team some flexibility. How much will he play? I don't know, but he'll be out there in case this situation where you lose a receiver happens again.
Yeah, I thought he was going to dress for this one, so we'll see if he dresses for this next one. He should. Daniel from Manchester, UK. Just a quick thought I had this morning after a great Steelers win. Given Fields' progression over the last 3 weeks and the identity that this team is beginning to build on offense, I can't help but wondering if failing to secure the Ayuk trade may be a blessing in disguise when it comes to the potential contract that Fields may have earned by the end of the season. I would be interested to hear your thoughts. So many hypotheticals within all that. And look, we talked about Fields and progression through these 3 games. It's great. Everybody wants to go to the end of the season already, Alex, and I'm not there yet. Look, the Ayuk deal didn't happen, so it didn't happen. You could still work around that from the cap perspective and all like that, the cash perspective and all like that, had they done it. So, I mean, there's no sense spending a lot of time on it with the blessing in disguise with Ayuk and all like that. Here's the fact. Justin Fields has progressed in 3 games. Looks like they might have something there, at least enough to move forward with in the next couple of games. This team's 3-0, and that's that.
Yeah, that's that. I mean, listen, you could have, with the salary cap, with the space they can have, you could have traded for Ayuk, paid him, and you could have signed Fields to a large contract if that's the route this thing goes in March. It was not one or the other to me. So, and yeah, in terms of what Fields will be for next year, I don't know. I'm not proclaiming he's the definite guy of the future. We can be a little too quick to make some of those proclamations at the quarterback position, but he is the guy for right now, and that's where I'm at right now.
Brian Tellini says, quick shout out to Nick Herbig. He's a wrecking machine. I would call him the best day 3 draft pick since Vince Williams. What is his ceiling? His floor appears to be in the attic.
That's funny.
Ain't that about the truth right there? Oh boy, it feels so good to be wrong about thoughts about him having to move inside. What is his floor? What is his ceiling? I don't know. We might
double-digit sack guy.
I mean, geez. Here's the thing: we're going to see a lot of Nick Herbig in these next couple of games. He did what he did yesterday on 19 snaps, and
eight pass rush snaps.
And what have we said about him in the time he's played? Boy, when Nick Herbig's on the field. His ceiling right now is, when Nick Herbig's on the field, and you're going to see more Nick Herbig on the field moving forward. And that guy can win around the edge. We've seen a little bit of him with the power. We've seen him play against the run. Going to be a lot of tape to watch on him in the next couple of weeks, potentially with this Highsmith groin injury. He is a fun kid to watch, and probably hard to get him out of TJ Watt's house or out of the chat room with him.
Yeah, I mean, and he on that first sack, he beat Slater clean. I think Slater got hurt at that point because I think he'd come out, but still, it's Rashawn Slater. That's an elite top 5 left tackle that you whooped around the edge on that one. So yeah, ceiling could be double-digit sack kind of guy. That's what his potential. And his efficiency. I mean, you mentioned 19 snaps. I think 8 pass rush snaps in this one, 2 sacks, and a third pressure on the Hail Mary that he probably should have finished with a sack. Also, credit to Minkah for breaking up that Hail Mary. I don't know if Hoka was going to catch that one. I'm glad we didn't have to find out. I'm glad Minkah batted that ball away. So Minkah's still making plays, even if the stat sheet was not particularly colorful in this one. But yeah, I mean, Herbig is just a dog.
Cameron Andrews writes in, happy Victory Monday. You may have answered this question on a podcast, but did report come out on what leg Troy Fautanu injured in practice on Friday? Also, I'm not trying to jump ahead too much. What's the chance of us resigning Dan Moore, and did Price himself out of Pittsburgh? So another question about Dan Moore's future and all that. As I always say, this stuff comes out in the wash. Peoples. I mean, let's let this thing get through the season here before we start speculating more about Dan Moore and his future and all. I don't think we know what leg that is on Troy, right?
No, not to my knowledge. I do not know. The tackle, I don't want to get ahead of myself either. I'm focusing on the present, but it's going to be really interesting. You're going to have Broderick Jones with a first-round tackle with probably a bumpy year up and down. Dan Moore, his situation, Fautanu injury. Going to be interesting to see how Pittsburgh handles the tackles here in the offseason.
Jalen Brown writes in, happy Victory Monday. Boy, like a lot of these starting with happy Victory Monday. Wondering if you guys could elaborate on how guys like Tom Arth and Arthur Smith have developed Fields. I see the term used, but how do you see those things coming to fruition? Particularly would like to hear about Tom Arth's impact. I mean, it's really impossible to say, but take a shot at it, Alex.
Yeah, positional coach scope and their influence, you feel it. I mean, he probably works with Tom Arth as much as anybody on that entire coaching staff, but it can be a little hard to decipher. I know that there's been a lot of emphasis on Fields and his footwork. I think Brooke Pryor had a long article before the season about changing up some of his footwork and cleaning up some of the mechanics. When I did my feature piece on Arth, I talked to a couple of former coaches and a former quarterback who played for him in college at John Carroll. That was the big thing that Arth emphasized. They always worked on footwork drills, and the guy told me he watched him in training camp go through drills. It was the same drills they did to John Carroll they did in Pittsburgh in training camp. And I assume still do so each day in practice as part of their daily routines and just mechanic and just, detail work. So I think probably footwork is probably a huge thing they really worked on and harped on and probably cleaned up with Justin Fields. I'm not probably enough of a quarterback mechanic expert to really dial in on every little bit detail about what they've changed with Justin Fields. But if I had to take a pretty educated guess in terms of what's changed a lot with Fields from an art standpoint, probably would be footwork. And then just, again, being with Smith, a competent, OC that's trusting him, that's getting the buy into the scheme and just playing well together. There's probably a lot of trust being built up here with a couple of wins when you got a quarterback that's playing well, doing what the offense is asking you to do, and you build upon that. They've really built upon, they built upon Fields every game this season. The Falcons game was very conservative, very fragile, very safe. Denver open up a bit more. Chargers game open up even more. So you're really seeing a natural progression with the way that Fields has worked into this offense.
That's the exciting thing is we've seen this offense kind of progress in each of these games. And once again, we're not explaining away anything coming out of this Chargers game and the continuity now at this fact and knowing what he can do all together. Combined with how he's played overall is exciting in and of itself. Within all that, Alex Rorty, this will be the final one, writes in, love the show. Thank you for taking questions. Here's mine. Other than Phil's ascent, what has surprised you most about this team this early on in the season and helps explain why they're off to a fast start? He says, my 2 cents, I thought getting Cam back would be helpful, but that his best days would be behind him. Instead, he's playing like a 29-year-old again. Thanks, gentlemen. He writes, so what is, I'm starting to lose my voice here. What has surprised you most about this team early on in the season that explains why they're off to a 3-0 start?
Aside from Fields, I don't know much has really surprised me. We knew, that I thought Cam would come back and play at a pretty high level, maybe again, beating even my expectations, but I wouldn't say I'm surprised. We knew they wanted to run the football. We knew they would have a good defense. I don't know if it's a surprise, but I think the play of some of the underrated defensive additions in Deshaun Elliott and Dante Jackson have been really, really encouraging. Jackson especially, I thought he was the guy. I thought, be an okay corner, just don't be a liability. Let Porter be number one. You can probably live with that. I think Jackson's been a really positive force overall, and Elliott, of course, has been unbelievable. I thought Elliott was a good signing. I was really happy to get him as a true designated strong safety. I have not started Minkah Fitzpatrick for a single box snap the entire season, which is just aces there. But I think the play of some of those underrated defensive additions like Elliott and Jackson would probably be my best answer.
Look, we thought this defense, I just think one of the things with me is this defense is even better than the good defense that I thought it would be. So that's a huge takeaway right now because they were hyenas. They were hyenas in that game against the Chargers for sure. And then, like you said, just a couple of those additions there really have fit in well. A lot of communicating going on. You can see how comfortable they are. And I guess the other thing would be, I made the point earlier in the show about Justin Fields, just really, not that it hasn't been apparent, but I think I just focused more on it last night on the TV tape that I just calm and cool as a cucumber. You don't know if they're winning or they're losing or what. He's very even keeled, and I kind of view that as something that I've learned about him, I guess.
Yeah, no, it's been really good to see. He's certainly not the most vocal guy, but each guy leads in different ways, and maybe there's stuff that happens behind closed doors. Obviously, I can't speak to everything there, but I do appreciate his leadership style. I appreciate his steadiness, and I think it's right for a pretty young offense. It's that they could have panicked. I think Calvin Austin had told Mike Florio the big difference from last year to this year is that this team's not panicking, that Arthur Smith is able to settle these guys, and they've had some tough outings, not had the production they wanted to, but no one's running for the hills. They're just going out there, going back to work, and you're seeing results.
All right, let's wind this up and give the people what they want. Tell them again how wrong we were about picking against the Steelers in this one, Alex.
Yes, both very, very. What do you like to say here? Wrong in this one.
Wrong.
We'll take it on the chin. But yeah, I mean, I thought Dobbins would have a better day. I was worried about that pass rush of Bosa and Mack. Obviously, Bosa got hurt. I knew that if Herbert, my question about the exercise, like how does Pittsburgh win this game? It was to me about Herbert and would he be as effective and would the offense change? I mean, really in the first half, you wouldn't have known that he was hurt. I thought Herbert played a good first half, moved around fine. And they probably ran some more pistol, a little less under center, but they were still under center a little bit. The offense didn't change that much to me for LA, but it was a really good run defense. And then, of course, once Herbert goes out, you got backup tackles in, you got Heineke in. He's only been here for like 3 weeks, and with the Chargers, it just, it was game on for Pittsburgh.
Spoiler alert, I won't be picking against the Steelers against the Colts when we do our Friday show.
All right. I don't know where I'm going. I might do it again. Hopefully
not. Look, what? All right. All right. Hope everybody enjoyed the show. Got a little bit long there as usual, but a lot to talk about. 3-0 Steelers. Getting ready to play the Colts. Mike Tomlin will address the media on Tuesday. We'll recap that on the Wednesday show. Start diving into the tape. We'll recap more of the All-22 during the Wednesday show, especially on the offensive side of football. When I can watch a little bit more of that, I'll have that digested by tonight. So you can follow me on Twitter/X at Steelers Depot. Follow Alex at Alex_Kozora. Follow the show at Terrible Podcast. Email the show, theterriblepodcast@gmail.com. If you like what we do and want to donate, SteelersDepot.com. Hit the donate button. If you want an ad-free version of the site, SteelersDepot.com. Hit the ad-free button. Follow the directions that way. Thank you for supporting the site, the show, listening, the questions, all that goes along with that. So until Wednesday, as always, thanks for listening to the Terrible Podcast with Dave and Alex.